Hello, welcome to the EPG Pathshala program in linguistics. I am Professor Ramendra Gargesh from the Department of Linguistics, University of Delhi. Today we will discuss linguistic stylistics. The 10th module of linguistic stylistics is again about metaphor. Metaphor is a very rich poetic figure and it requires greater discussion. In this module, you will be made aware of the dead metaphors, their importance, conceptual metaphor theory, extended metaphors, and the use of metaphor in literary and non-literary discourse. The use of metaphor cuts across language use. Let us begin with the dead metaphors. We have noted that earlier that a metaphor is characterized by linguistic deviation. This characteristic allows metaphor, particularly poetic metaphor, to create a novel and original combination of ideas, objects, and sensations. But as they come into common use, the novelty of the metaphor wears off, and sometimes there is no perception of semantic deviation. More significantly, they lose their iconicity. For example, in root cause of the problem, or in heated argument, the original metaphor has lost its figurative charge, perhaps. Root cause of a problem is simply the fundamental reason for the occurrence of the problem. And heated argument, it's another expression for angry exchange of words. But such metaphors we use every day in everyday speech, without even recognizing that they are metaphors. Such metaphors are dead metaphors. But metaphors never really die. The metaphors that die in poetic language come to live in ordinary language. The habit of words to extend their meaning by metaphor and then cease to be metaphorical is a fact of language. It further allows metaphors to be used to fill gaps in vocabulary. How do we interpret? What do we make of leg of a table, wings of a building, clock hands, World Wide Web, crashing of hanging of computer, surf, crash course? All these are metaphorical extensions, and there are no literal substitutes for these expressions. So they fill a gap in vocabulary. All dead metaphors. This is true of all languages. In Hindi, metaphorical extension has often been accompanied by phonological variation. For example, Shikh, head, becomes Shikhar, peak of a mountain. Pet, belly, becomes peti, box. Kohni, elbow, becomes kona, corner. Language is full of such dead metaphors. It has led many scholars to believe in the inescapable metaphorical quality of all human discourse. Cognitive linguists have criticized the traditional dead metaphor theory. That is, the view that a conventional metaphor is dead and it no longer influences thought. Conceptual metaphor theory, advanced by them, rejects the notion that metaphor is a decorative device. It asserts that metaphor is central to thought and therefore to language. The dead metaphor account misses an important point, namely that what is deeply entrenched, hardly noticed, and thus effortlessly used, is most active in our thought. The metaphors may be highly conventional and effortlessly used, but this does not mean that they have lost their vigor in thought and that they are dead. On the contrary, they are alive. They are alive in the most important sense. They govern our thought. They are the metaphors we live by. Now, what is this conceptual metaphor theory? A metaphor that governs our thought may be reflected in our everyday language by a wide variety of expressions. It is no longer simply a dead metaphor, but what cognitive linguists call a conceptual metaphor. So, dead metaphor is no dead metaphor, but a conceptual metaphor. A conceptual metaphor or cognitive metaphor refers to the understanding of one idea or conceptual domain in terms of another. In Metaphors We Live By, Lakoff and Johnson, they have introduced the terms source domain and target domain. This is to understand the notion of conceptual metaphor. If time is money is the conceptual metaphor before us, time is the target domain which we are trying to understand in terms of the source domain, that is money. Target domain and source domain are roughly equivalent to tenor and vehicle. The terms given by I.A. Richards and discussed in the previous module. But unlike in the case of tenor and vehicle, there is a unidirectional mapping of source domain on the target domain in the conceptual metaphor. So here we have time is money. It is reflected in you are wasting my time. It is reflected in the gadget will save you hours. It is reflected in I don't have the time to give you. So, as the authors explain, the conceptual metaphor, time is money, reflects the notion of time in Western culture. They say time in their culture is a valuable commodity. It is a limited resource which is used to accomplish goals. So the phrase giving my time carries a stronger connotation of bargaining. Selection of such metaphors tends to be directed by a subconscious or implicit habit in the mind of the person employing them. Similarly, the conceptual metaphor argument is war is reflected in our everyday language by a wide variety of expressions. Argument is war. He attacked every weak point in my argument. Argument is war. His criticisms were right on target. Argument is war. I demolished his argument. Argument is war. He shot down all my arguments. Argument is war. In this way, the authors suggest that our conceptual system is largely metaphorical. And the way we think, what we experience, and what we do every day is very much a matter of metaphor. Among the most important implications of this theory are conceptual metaphors structure our thinking, our knowledge, and indeed also our communication. They are grounded in physical experience. Extended metaphor. An extended metaphor is a group of several metaphors developing a single image. An author uses an extended metaphor to build a larger comparison between two things. The extended metaphor works with a sustained analogy with the multiple linked tenors running through a given text. In Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold, for example, we have the extended metaphor of faith throughout the third stanza. Down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. So this is Matthew Arnold's poem, Dover Beach, lines 21 to 29. An extended metaphor is made of a primary metaphor and a string of secondary metaphors, whose vehicles are metonymic of the primary vehicle and whose tenors are metonymic of the primary tenor. This is the view given by Rifaatier. Now, in this example from Dover Beach, the primary tenor is faith. In the given context, the vanishing faith in religion in the post-Darwinian world. It is in that context that we look at faith. And the primary vehicle, the sea at low tide. The melancholy roar, the night wind, the vast edges, and naked shingles are metonymic images of the primary vehicle, the sea. Likewise, there is a parallel chain of metonymic images of the primary tenor, faith, which is vanishing, and therefore despair, uncertainty, ugliness in the world, etc. The central metaphor of faith is a vast sea. It is developed in secondary metaphors. The situation of the sea waters flowing around the earth like a belt clasping the earth, use of simile, once in high tide but now at low tide, withdrawing and making a melancholy sound, leaving behind an ugly shore covered with naked shingles, even as the night wind has started blowing, is a metaphoric image of the disappearance of faith from human life, leaving bare the sense of insecurity, uncertainty, and ugliness of human situation. Extended metaphor occurs in ordinary discourse too. It does not generally extend beyond one or two sentences, of course, unlike in Dover Beach where it went across many lines. We can take some examples of extended metaphor in ordinary language. My drooping spirits were uplifted by the news. One example. Second, he has a dense head which logic can never penetrate. So these are examples of extended metaphors in common speech. There's another variety, mixed metaphor. Mixed metaphors are different metaphors occurring in the same utterance, especially in the same sentence, which are used in the same utterance, which are used to express the same concept. In simpler terms, a mixed metaphor is an incongruous combination of two or more dead metaphors that have not quite lost their imaginative force and which sometimes results in the unintentional comic effect. Let us take some examples. The departed leader's footprints will be our beacon lights for the future. The departed leader's footprints will be our beacon lights for future. Another example, the plan is tailor-made to suit our requirements, but it will have to be pruned for lack of adequate funds. Be careful. Listen to these two examples again, whether they make sense or not. The departed leader's footprints will be our beacon lights for future. Second, the plan is tailor-made to suit our requirements, but it will have to be pruned for lack of adequate funds. Another example, corruption is the biggest bottleneck holding up India's passage into the 21st century. Another example, we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. So we will notice in these that there is no perception of incongruity in the example, corruption is the biggest bottleneck, or in we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. In the earlier examples, we notice incongruity of footprints becoming beacon lights, because the two are still not completely dead metaphors. The same applies to the next one, that is, the plan is tailor-made. How can the plan be pruned? In contrast, bottleneck combines the meaning of two metaphors. In contrast, Bottleneck has come to simply mean obstacle and is quite acceptable. It combines the meaning of the two metaphors. To cross the bridge when we come to it. Two metaphors involved with this expression: we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. What are these two? One, to cross the bridge when we come to it, and second, to burn the boats. So into something like we are ready to fight when the time comes, and still maintain imagery that makes sense. So this imagery still makes sense and is acceptable. According to Lakoff and Johnson, mixed metaphors often, but not always, result in a conflict of concepts. They placed mixed metaphors into two categories. One, impermissible metaphor. Two, permissible metaphors. Impermissible mixed metaphors are metaphors that conflict because they serve different purposes. Let us take some examples where there is a conflict between two conceptual metaphors. Argument is journey and argument is container. Let's take another two. We can now follow the path of the core of the argument. Another one, the content of the argument proceeds as follows. Now, permissible metaphors, according to them, are mixed metaphors that do not conflict with each other because they serve the same purpose and exhibit a correlation with each other. They suggest that argument as journey can address the direction of the argument, and the argument as container can address the amount of content of the argument. Hence, these are permissible mixed metaphors. Another example, at this point, our argument doesn't have much content. In the example, in what we've done so far, we have provided the core of our argument. But mixed metaphors need not be judged only on the basis of concept of conflict or incongruity. It's more complicated. Consider Hamlet's soliloquy. To be or not to be, that is the question, etc. To take up arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. There is an apparent incongruity in taking up arms and sea of troubles. Yet the combination of the two incompatible metaphors is significant, as it reveals an abstracted state of mind with an intensity which a coherent image could not have done. So it is a very valid metaphor. So let us now look at metaphor in literary and non-literary discourse. Metaphor is used extensively in both literary and non-literary discourse. We cannot, however, distinguish between the two kinds formally. Novel figures characterize all speech as diverse, as poetic and scientific, though of course they have a larger role in literature than in non-literature. What is more noteworthy is the fact that the same metaphoric usage can mean different things in different discourses, since the metaphoric usage is context-bound. Take an example. Man is machine. In an anatomy class, the utterance would be interpreted in terms of the great deal of resemblance between the functioning of a man's body and that of a machine. But in a poem on modern society, it might signify modern man's loss of individuality and freedom and the power to think for himself. It is therefore possible to distinguish between the two kinds on a functional level. Hedwig Conrad, quoted in Ricoeur, distinguishes between two kinds of metaphors: the linguistic metaphor and the aesthetic metaphor. The linguistic metaphor names an object with the help of the most typical representative of its attributes. Thus, to call a man a lamppost is to evoke the attribute of tallness of the latter, and applied to the former, man. The non-literary metaphor has in general a rhetorical function. As part of an intended communication, it argues its point, and having established it, does not demand any further interpretation. As such, it is finite in meaning. The aesthetic metaphor, on the other hand, is used for creating illusion, principally by presenting the world in a new light, giving a new impression of objects by creating novel relationships between the objects. It can be said that it is characterized by iconicity or double vision and the potential to create affective context. It is not autonomous, but is an integral part of literary artifact as an art symbol. Its meaning is not finite, but is determined by the reader's perceptions, and as such may change across time and space. Because of the relationship between the metaphor, because if we take the tenor and the vehicle, the tenor will have one kind of semantics and the vehicle has another kind of semantics. So looking at both simultaneously is what is characterized as double vision. And the tenor and vehicle combining together, giving a third concretized metaphor, is iconicity. All these metaphors, when they are identified as symbols in art. And at the level of the art symbol, these metaphors contribute their significances to other metaphors and other devices which have their own significances, and mutually also within the context the significances can further modify. And all this modification is because of how readers perceive the metaphors. So there is no one meaning to a metaphor. Metaphor is open to multiple interpretations depending upon what is the worldview of the reader. To summarize, now you know how metaphor is a figure of speech and how it describes one thing as being another. That metaphor is the most important figure of speech used not only in poetry but in ordinary discourse as well. It is a versatile figure of speech that works on all parts of speech.